and welcome to the inner chamber of Ellipses in ShawScope, episode number 7, and we're up to 1960. And by us, I mean me, Clive Davis, him over there,
Darren Jones,
and him down there,
Nick Han-Hsiang.
Right. And we are talking Shaw. We're making our way through the Shaw Brothers catalogue, more or less chronologically, but we jump out every now and again, like we will be here today actually on this show. So I was looking at the output of 1960, and there was one clear extant title that jumped out, and that is The Enchanting Shadow. And we have to do that for a number of reasons, which we'll get to. But then, right, bingo cards at the ready. The connective tissue with the second half is, well, it's twofold. They're both directed by Li Han-Hsiang. And this second one is 1977's The Mad Monk. But then they're both, so The Enchanting Shadow is based on a story which was later remade as a Chinese ghost story. And of course, The Mad Monk became The Mad Monk, the Stephen Chow vehicle. So basically the link here is two Li Han-Hsiang films at Shaw that were later remade as much bigger hits, I'm guessing, maybe, than these were in their time. Apart from maybe Enchanting Shadow might have been.
No, Enchanting Shadow, I think, was huge.
Probably so. But
Yeah,
I don't know if it was
yeah.
quite, I mean, it was huge, but then the Chinese ghost story was like, everyone and their dog made a Chinese ghost story rip-off, right? So in that, to our modern eyes, Chinese ghost story is still there, I guess, whereas Enchanting Shadow is a bit more in the history.
And both of these movies have nice location footage shot in temples. So there's another nice little connector for it.
And also the second film is getting us ever closer to maybe one day programming a Goethe Film Festival. We got two now, and I didn't think we'd ever have two, and you never know what's around the corner, right? So,
well, I think if we go back to Malaysia, we might see him again.
Yeah, they love Goethes, don't they? I think.
Yeah,
they're big fans.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if they slosh around as much like a water balloon as it did in Mad Monk, but anyway.
If you're Malaysian and you have a Goethe, let us know. So,
yeah, send us pictures,
even
please.
if you're not Malaysian and you have a Goethe, yeah. So anyway, right, off we go then with, I guess we'll start with Enchanting Shadow. As I said, 1960, directed Li Han-Hsiang, who we spoke a bit about before because when we did Magnificent Concubine, right? And he might pop up again because he seems to have been one of the big Shaw directors of the era, kind of directed some award-winning films, and seems to have been handed a lot of the big projects, right? For instance, the same year as The Mad Monk, I think he also did a Dream of the Red Chamber adaptation, and so he seems to have been a safe pair of hands who they trusted. And so the source for this is a 18th century ghost story by Pu Song Ling, and there's a collection. Have either of you read any Pu Song Ling short stories?
No.
Nope.
They have been. I'm trying to think what the collection was called. It's called Strange Stories from the Studio or something like that. And
yes, it's the what is it? Yeah, sorry, I was going to correct you, and then I realised I didn't actually have the.
You just echoed me. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I had it in my head.
But it's quite a fun collection actually. There's one story I remember in particular, a very weird story about, like, if I remember correctly, a couple of eyeballs that can talk, just kind of crawling out of their owner's sockets at night and just rolling about, and it was quite good.
Wow.
Yes,
that's very Clive Barker's that Hands story he wrote about the revolt of the Hands. That's cool.
Yeah, no, I remember enjoying some. I don't really remember. This one was I don't really remember, but it's a bit more. I suppose it's a bit more familiar and wouldn't have jumped out, right? The old scholar falls in love with someone who actually turns out to be either a ghost or a skeleton, or there's a lot of Japanese ghost stories with this kind of theme as well, right? That's a spoiler, by the way. Spoilers all the way.
She's a skeleton.
She turns out to be Bruce Willis, and he's well annoyed because he didn't back Bruce Willis. He turns around in the morning expecting to see Betty Law, and he's there. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
I'd pay to see that.
Very early credit for Bruce Willis when he grew up in China.
in 1960.
Yes, yeah. It was Bruce Willis and Bruce Lee all the way. This does have that Zhao Lei fellow in it as well, who was in Kingdom of the Beauty and Magnificent Concubine as well. He's that actor that was always like the young emperor or whatever. That was his kind of claim.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's I thought he was great actually as the as our young scholar guy.
Yeah, well, both of which were directed by Li Han-Hsiang as well.
Right. So he was I was almost surprised, or thinking like it's Linda would have been good as the ghost. Not that the lady who played the ghost wasn't.
So yeah, very basic plot beats. Yeah, Chow Lei is this traveling scholar who stops at a dilapidated old temple despite the villagers' warnings. And I have to admit, there's a scene. So the music is by Yao Min. The music is very good. There's a lot of spooky.
I have a note that just says I would love to have the soundtrack to this. Just that kind of. It almost sounds like they show later on. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the Japanese version is the koto, right? Like the Chinese version has another name, but that kind of instrument. But like the way
or something like
that. But it almost sounds like an electric bass guitar playing Chinese music. It's got this resounding kind of like wet bass sound that almost like spaghetti western kind of a sound, and it just blew me away. I was really excited by the whole soundtrack.
Well, the thing it reminded me a bit is there's a scene like when he finally gets a coachman or whatever to take him to the temple. It really played like a Hammer film, like someone finally getting someone to take them to Castle Dracula.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Although that cart looked rickety as fuck. Like those wheels were like at a crazy angle. I was like, I wouldn't go anywhere in that cart.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Hammer because we're jumping ahead. But the whole thing, has just got this gothic, if you can apply that, gothic horror, if you can apply that to China. Hammer, Italian 50s, 60s Bava Freda vibe to it. Lots of shadow.
Yeah, watching it this time, that jumped out at me as well, because I think, again, the temptation is sometimes if you're thinking of this as a Shaw film or a Hong Kong film or whatever, and you've got it in that kind of category in your head, but then you forget, of course, when this was new, there would have been films from all over the world coming out in Hong Kong, and so it wasn't just that they were reacting to their own cinematic history. They certainly would have had, in fact, I think the Hammer films were actually very popular, weren't they, in Hong Kong and Japan, and so almost certainly Li Han-Hsiang is channeling a bit of Terence Fisher here, I think. Or to your point, Frida or Bava, or who knows?
Yeah, some of the color work really reminded me of there's a lot of scenes that have this beautiful complementary color, kind of like intense blue against orange and things like that. That was just
it looks
gorgeous.
Great. Everything about this film is sumptuous, I think would be the right word. It's quite.
I have a note that just says I'm getting totally lost just in the atmosphere. Like you've said before, Clive, those movies you'd like to climb into and live inside. This, in a way, this has that element for me. That just the whole dilapidated old temple with all the kind of patched up. Again, I don't know what the Chinese word is for shoji, but like for the rice paper kind of windows.
Right.
You know, yeah, that stuff is just all. Yeah.
So anyway, so as Chow Lei is hanging out at this old temple, he becomes aware of what appear to be his neighbors, particularly, Betty Law, and they kind of slowly bond and fall in love, kind of over a shared interest in like you said, music and poetry and calligraphy. It's a very kind of old-fashioned courting kind of, a couple of nerds, basically.
Yeah.
In modern parlance, I suppose. Sophisticated nerds. But so Betty Law's character seems to be a housemaid for the scary granny, played by Tong Yuk Ching.
Yeah, she's great.
Another major character is a kind of formerly kind of heroic swordsman who's now a little bit older, hanging about, young Chi Hing, who seems to be a bit suspicious about all these goings on. And basically, it's funny. It's one of those things, you're way ahead of the film. And I don't know if you would have been in 1916 necessarily, maybe even so back then. You're way ahead of the film. You know she's going to turn out to be a ghost, right? And this is, but it's all about the way the film plays out, I think, isn't it? This is like you said, Nick, you get lost, you give yourself over to it as much as you are willing, or you can, or you're able. And it's all about watching the film play out. I'm not sure if this is going to be a shocking reveal for anyone in 2022, right? But
no, but there's a few clever little things that are done. One of them is the moment where she first appears completely outside of when she appears in town rather than in the temple, and you're kind of like, hang on, what? How is she out there and like bringing the painting in? And there's the whole feeling of like, and then you almost think, is this like some sort of time slip more than a ghost? Is this like, is there a separate time zone happening at the back part of this?
That's
which was strange.
With a DeLorean through me.
Yes, yeah. It was a bit of a giveaway. And then I love the part where Granny makes a crack, like when he first finds his way in there, that he's a ghost, and it like. And yeah, it was clever little things, and it did leave me. I mean, I was pretty sure they were the ghosts, and that would play out. But I liked that they played with it a little bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of night and day as well, isn't there? There are the kind of the lovey-dovey bits, with the poetry and the ducks, because that's a big motif in this, isn't it? These emperor ducks that that represent the two lovers. In the poem and outside of the poem, and then you've got the nighttime, and that's kind of the daytime stuff, even though she's not always around in the day. And then you've got the nighttime stuff, which is the scary Mario Bava stuff, with the monster, the ghosty monster, wandering around with the long fingernails, who you only ever see in silhouette.
Yeah,
who goes and cuts people's feet. And drinks their blood. And yeah, it's the transition between those two kind of almost two genres within the same film are completely seamless and completely, but they are very, very distinct.
Yes.
Parts of the film.
Yeah. The horror stuff plays as real proper horror, like some really effective use of like the wind and the kind of the storms, right? The bamboo forest shaking. The birds are amazing. These big flocks of birds that suddenly take off at different points of the film. It's properly creepy. In fact, the whole opening part is a previous guy who shows up there, right, and gets murdered. It's kind of a setup for, hey, this temple might not be a very smart place to stay. and then we introduce our main character who decides to stay there because he's a fourth. He says, like, when people are warning me, he's like, but I'm a forthright guy. I've got nothing to be concerned about. Which, as it turns out, kind of is, because in a way, part of the message of this is like, keep it in your pants, bro. Like, you better be chaste. And so the fact that his relationship with her is ultimately chaste and he keeps rebuffing her advances is why he doesn't end up with a big hole stabbed in his foot. And, yeah.
Yeah, because we find out later on that she's sent to seduce men.
Yeah.
And lead them to their
Granny.
Yeah.
And so Granny can, then murder them.
Yeah. There's one thing though.
Granny's not getting any action by herself, right? So
no.
Well, and I'll tell you why. Right, and I am going to be a little bit cruel here to that lovely lady who I'm sure is a great actress and I'm sure is a lovely person. But the granny either looks like 1960s monster makeup, which is what she's meant to look like. It's scary, or she looks like ENCHANTING out of Miracle Fighters.
Yeah, I thought that as well. Watching it this time, I was wondering actually if we've got this the wrong way around. I'm wondering if part of the Miracle Fighters, one of the gags is that she's supposed to look like Granny from Enchanting Shadow.
Yeah. It's
actually uncanny how much.
It really is, yeah. And presumably that is, that's a female actress. I didn't check it out. But, presumably I don't want to be cruel to someone. But, Yeah. I'll give him that a rest today.
Yes.
Yeah, and but something as well that I want to mention. When you're viewing this, and if you've seen, if you were kicking around watching the big Hong Kong films, in the past or recently, and you've managed to see a Chinese ghost story before you've seen this. It's, they're kind of quite different films, but the plot is pretty much identical. So,
well, it's the same source material, isn't it?
Of course, but but there aren't any surprises in this film if you're going to see. You've already seen Chinese Ghost Story in terms of plot and
we won't get too much into that because we will, of course, on our sister show, we will be taking another look. I'm assuming another look for all of us. We've all seen a Chinese Ghost Story before.
Actually, I may not have. I don't think I have.
Okay.
They will both be first time views for me.
That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to have some fresh eyes because I haven't seen it for a long time, but I think for both me and Darren, Chinese Ghost Story is so much like such a key title in a way, and in general as well. I think for a whole generation of fans, right? So it'll be interesting to have some fresh eyes on it as well.
It's just part of the furniture.
Very excited to rewatch it actually, because I've just taken it for granted that it's a classic, and I'm sure it is great. But it'll be really interesting to go back and see it.
I watched it a few weeks ago before we decided to do it. So I won't go into that. We'll save that for the next one. But,
also worth mentioning that I thought this was going to be a musical at one point as well, because there's a scene near the beginning with someone sweeping up and singing, and I thought, but it turns out not to be a musical, but it seemed to have been heading that way.
Yeah, I think other than Yan, who's the old swordsman guy, who I think he also kind of sings a bit as he does some kata with his blade, but that's about it, I think. Yeah.
But it has the feel, and because they were making a lot of musicals at the time, it does have that, like, for instance, some parts of the soundtrack as well felt a little bit in the same way as some of the earlier films we talked about, where it wasn't exactly a musical, but they told you the story, so it felt a bit like a musical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a Greek chorus off-screen kind of musical. And it had that kind of, and because so much of the film is about music and so it had a bit of a, you can tell that the people who made it have experience of musicals. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
one of the assistant directors on this film was none other than King Hu himself.
Oh,
Who would have
Frankie Frenzone.
Yes, exactly. Who would go on to become his own kind of legend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give it over to if either of you have got any more to say. I mean, this is so, I don't know, kind of, it's classy, obviously, but I don't know if I have that much to say about it beyond. It is a film that I did enjoy, but it's slightly homeworky, eat your greensy, just because it's not necessarily gonna thrill. It's a slightly more objective. It's enjoyable, but it's slightly more on the objective enjoyment side of things rather than like, fucking hell, that was a great time. If you see what I mean.
Huh. You know what? Maybe because I haven't seen Chinese Ghost Story, so this was fresh to me in a bunch of ways. But I have to disagree a little bit. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Okay, well,
I absolutely was enchanted. There's a bunch of things. Like I loved the Yan character, this older guy who keeps kind of sounding out the younger scholar, like, do you? And then he won't ever directly say, hey, are you seeing these ghost people as well? And like that goes on and on until finally, basically, and that wonderful scene where she kind of goes to our ghost girlfriend goes to our young scholar and is like, yeah, Granny wants to kill you. She is coming for you. And he's like, ooh. And he goes, there's that whole awkward scene where he's trying to sleep with the older guy. Like, is it all right? And the guy keeps trying to put him off. Like, well, I do snore. And I night scream and stuff. So, but then eventually he's like, fuck it. You can sleep here. And then, yeah, she shows up with that great weird scene. He puts the sword in the door and kind of Sam Raimi zaps her. And then at the end when, right, she's like, well, can you take my skeleton out of here? And he does dig her up and take her off. There's a beautiful scene where he walks up and it's almost like it's a painting come to life and it's Granny, it turns out, sitting with her back to the audience wearing this kind of, straw hat thing. And I was like, holy shit, what a beautiful, I was just sumptuous fucking image that I could just revel in. And then there's my favorite line in the whole thing is, the jade hairpin secretly mourns my aging. Because all I could think was like, I have an electric nose hair trimmer that loudly acknowledges my aging. But no, I thought
one of them. I got one of them as well. Did you get yours from Don Quixote?
I may well have. I'm pretty sure I bought it in Japan.
Right. They're good, they are.
They are.
We're going to get to Darren when he comes over. He's going to take one home with him.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah. He's already got the banana case.
No, you know what? I think you might actually have bought me one before. I've got one.
Oh,
is it like a little hair trimmer?
Yeah.
I've got one.
Oh,
you've given me one of them.
Oh, there you go.
Subtle hint. Here's a gift.
Yes, that's not the mustache Darren has.
The other thing I'll say is there's a guy, so at the beginning of the movie, we see a guy show up and get murdered. But then there's the second guy who shows up midway through the movie is like, I'm going to stay here too with my servant. And they're kind of talking about this whole thing. This place is reputed to be haunted. And he's like, I would fuck a ghost if I had the chance. I would absolutely have a crack at that. I was like, wow, this guy's going to be dead next scene. And sure enough, he's dead next scene.
Is it one of the Hands of the Razor movies? It might be the third one, where Shintaro Katsu's character expresses a desire to fuck a ghost. Says something like, "Oh, it'll be nice and cool down there."
Probably. I would not be surprised at all. I think the third one's the one I've seen the least times.
It's the lesser of the three, isn't it?
Yeah.
I haven't. Surprisingly, I haven't got much to say other than I agree with you and disagree with you Clive. So I agree with Nick and disagree with Clive. That for me, it was a treat. And I had seen it before, but years and years ago.
I'd seen it not that long ago, I think, which also might have tempered.
But I think, again, it's the sumptuousness of it, as you described it, because it just exudes quality. You know, it just the acting's on point. The sets are beautiful, camera work's beautiful. It's got some lovely horror elements in it that you don't necessarily expect to be as classy as they are from Hong Kong. You know, we think we have this assumption that, you know, the Western hammer and, like we said, Italy, you know, and Japan for that matter, actually have the monopoly on classy horror. You know, Hong Kong doesn't have this reputation for anything other than kind of schlocky or derivative horror. And although I wouldn't really categorize this as a horror film, it's certainly got a lot of horror elements that I think are done very, very well. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's been many years since I've watched it, but I was thoroughly entertained throughout. And to be honest, I was sitting down just kind of marveling at most of it throughout the whole thing, at the same things you were, you know, the camera work, the acting, just as I say, just the quality of it, you know.
It's interesting that you say that as well, Darren. I know exactly what you mean. This kind of sits more alongside something like Kwai Dan or something like that, as opposed to like Mr. Vampire or
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and this is not something we associate with Hong Kong at all, ever.
Right.
I can't think of another Hong Kong film that does horror as classy as this does.
Yes, unless you're thinking of something like Rouge, which isn't exactly a horror film, is it?
Okay, yeah, Rouge I would... Well, but again, Rouge is actually quite derivative of this, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's definitely in that...
you know, and Chinese Ghost Story is very classy in its own way, but it's...
Yeah, but it's mixes, a bit more...
It mixes schlock with classiness, you know, which is why you're going to like that, I think, Nick. But yeah, no, I thoroughly agree with Nick. I think that it is a treat, and it's really, really, really got me thinking about what's his name, Li Han-Hsiang. Because everything I've seen of his, which admittedly is not an awful lot, but you know, we've started to eat into his sort of big works, at least, or his more famous works, and I'm beginning to think he can't put a foot wrong, because you know he's not really failed at anything that I've seen.
Well, it's interesting. He seems to be, so far, again, like we said, we've got a long way to go. We've only seen a few things, but he seems to be in that interesting category of not necessarily fitting the kind of auteur theory necessarily of someone who has their fingerprints all over something, but yeah, like a good, proper journeyman director who could turn their hands to anything, but at a very high level, right?
Yeah.
So he's not necessarily just pumping them out. You know, he's not a King Wu either, though. But he's kind of. I'm trying to think what a good analogy, like an old Hollywood director who regularly put out like really solidly made big budget productions.
Yeah. Well, like maybe, you know, I don't know, Paul and Pressburger or something like that. You could possibly.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a very high bar. I'd have to see a lot more really good Li Han-Hsiang films.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's having seen probably 4 films now that he's directed. I'm now going to go out of my way to go and see some more. You know,
right?
And if I see his name, if I see his name on HKMDB on a film I haven't heard of, then that's automatically gone 10 places up the list.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. It's you're learning, right? And you're like, oh, it's gone from a name that meant nothing to a name that means something to us, right? So
yeah.
Which is one of the things this project's all about.
Yeah, but I surprise myself. Other than saying it's just quality, it just exudes class, and the horror elements are good. It's got a skeleton in it. It's got decomposition sequence in it.
Yep.
It's got scary horror makeup. It's got a reasonable amount of blood.
Yep. Yeah, that surprised me actually. I have to say, I was surprised to see this early, kind of that bright red Shaw blood getting splattered around the place, and it's just got atmosphere up the ass. To be honest, it's so deeply atmospheric.
Put it on the re-release. Atmosphere up the ass.
Yeah.
Next year. That poet of film criticism.
But we're
all agreed. I think we're all agreed that it is, even again, if you temper your expectations a little bit as a modern viewer, don't expect to necessarily be blown away, let's say. But yes, it is an essential watch, I think, for people who would be listening to a podcast about Shaw Brothers.
Yeah. But also, actually, I'll go as far as to say horror fans.
Yeah.
If you're a Hammer horror fan, if you're an Italian horror fan, if you've seen, if you're into Hong Kong horror like Chinese Ghost Story, then we're looking at one of its origins.
Yeah, or like we said as well, if you're interested in the kind of the elegant thrills of a Kwaidan or something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of there are pleasures to be had.
And if, like me, you have a fetish for just old rundown Asian temples, this is a really great film to just lose yourself in.
I haven't met anyone who doesn't like a rundown old Asian pagoda temple.
I used to love going to those places in Japan. And a quick question, Clive, have you ever, they have that thing at New Year's where you can get the fortunes from the temple, right?
Yes.
They're kind of, you put in your however many 100 yen or whatever, you get the thing out. And then the year of the earthquake, the 2011 earthquake, I got the worst possible one. The one that's like that Marky Smith song, like all monies will, evade you. And,
right.
Like it was just this list of like absolute like, holy shit. The one that I guess you immediately are supposed to then, tie up to the tree and run away from.
Right.
And that's the only one I ever took. In the whole 10 years, I only ever got my fortune once, and it was the one that was like, your marriage is going to break down, your pigs will die in a fire, you are fucked.
That is very interesting, but where's the question?
Have you gotten one of those? I was like,
yeah.
And then have you ever gotten one that was like really terrifyingly bad? Like
I only ever get the good ones for some reason.
Okay.
I mean, I don't believe in it, so it doesn't really matter.
No, but it's still disconcerting because it's apparently really rare. Obviously, they don't want to put out a lot of the, holy shit, buddy, you're screwed.
You should have kept it as collector's item.
I would think so. I do feel like, but then, as I said, there was a giant earthquake, and all around the same time I went to Mexico. That
didn't just
Christmas.
happen to you, though.
No. I recognize that. I'm aware that. In fact, many people were more directly and more powerfully impacted by the tsunami than I was.
You think?
But I will say, funnily enough, I bought that Christmas right before that March earthquake. I went to Mexico and bought this terrifying devil wooden mask with actual like goat horns coming out of it. That these bugged out eyes. It looked like it had been basically somebody being strangled. A kind of blue faced, throttled look. Brought it home, and Jen was like, what is that? And please don't hang that on the wall. So I put it on the wall. I put sunglasses on it to at least to stop the bulging eyes. But our life really did kind of turn to shit for several years after that, until finally I just took it away and I did destroy it because I was like, I think I brought some seriously bad mojo. And I'm not somebody who's a big believer in any of these things. But the 5 years after I bought that thing and that it was in our house were probably the worst 5 years of our life. To be honest.
Around the time Nick met me.
No, it was quite a while after we met. Go ahead there, Darren.
Could have been a lot worse. It could have said, avoid cuts to the feet. Beware long clawy shadows. And don't finish young ladies' poetry.
Right.
Or make analogies about ducks.
I thought that story was going a different way there for a bit. I thought, because what could also happen is the mask just fuses to your face and you can't remove it. And then the lost wilderness years of Nick when he had a mask.
Had a Mexican devil mask attached to his face.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going down the Jim Carrey avenue. That's why I became
really annoying for about 5 years.
Yeah.
I think Jim Carrey's been really annoying for longer than 5 years.
Yeah.
Mask or not.
Yeah.
Do that again.
Right. Anyway.
So good segue really onto our next film by this same director.
Yes, starring Jim Carrey. Oh no, hang on, no.
Yes.
Yes. So a bit of background here then. So Crazy Jigong was apparently a real person from the 12th century Southern Song dynasty. A Chan Buddhist. Apparently that just basically means the same as Zen or Zazen in Japanese, Chan Buddhist. And so a legendary kind of folkloric, basically a kind of rogue monk, right? Who leaves his temple and then, fair enough, is wandering about, and seems to be a bumbling, derelict, stupid fool who is in fact secretly quite a wise and benevolent figure who kind of takes on injustices in a unique way, I think. And
that kind of holy fool.
Yes, very much the holy fool. Right. Yeah. And you can get there is an English language like collected stories, which I'm currently reading the Kindle of. It even has the first story in it is kind of an origin story about, how Jigong came to be a monk, and so it's kind of quite interesting if you're interested in that character. And these were basically collected in the 19th century, I think, or late 1890s into the beginning of the 20th century by a guy called Guo Jiating. And I was reading in this introduction I have for the Kindle, the English translation, that it seems to be, these would have been, in the oral tradition, stories that were told again and again and again. And basically, Guo Jiating went out and he kind of collected every Jigong story he could find. In the Kindle English translation I have, there's 89 stories.
Whoa, okay.
I don't know how many there are altogether. I think there were 2 volumes he published originally. And apparently, according to this introduction to the version I have, they were, they were also, they were like, okay, I'm going to collect all these stories. But also, they were kind of filtered through his then contemporary Beijing surroundings. So they're very Beijing, apparently. They're very modern, urban Beijing characters and things are reflected, through them. So I'm wondering, because I'm assuming those collections is the source for the many, many, many film and TV versions of Qigong. So it'd be interesting because obviously that we're not really going to recognize that, right? So, but
yes,
I'm wondering how much of the stuff in it, like the comedy, I'm wondering how, like for instance, if you were to watch a film from, I don't know, like a screwball comedy of the 1920s or 1930s, and that's kind of have these very kind of New York kind of characters of that era. I'm wondering if there's a certain early 20th century Beijing mentality to this. So anyway, it's neither here nor there. Qidong, yes, adapted for the screen more than you might think. There's at least 20 films since 1939, including a run from 1964 to 1960. There was a series starring Sun Ma. And then, of course, there's the famous Stephen Chow 1993 adaptation, which I think most people will be familiar with, which we'll be getting to in the Not in ShawScope spin-off from this episode. And then since 1984, there seems to have been at least 20 TV series from Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore. The one I'm most interested to see is there's one from 2001 called Zen Master, in which Karl Maka plays Qidong.
Yeah, I spotted that one.
Yeah, so
it's amazing though, isn't it? Is that there's this whole, we've come to this pretty much. I mean, we knew the film existed. It wasn't really on my radar. I knew about it, but I would have taken ages to watch it. And we've kind of come to this via Li Han-Hsiang. And all of a sudden we discover there's this whole canon of Qigong cinema, Yeah.
So this one's from 1977, as you mentioned, directed and written this time, interestingly enough, by Li Han-Hsiang. And as I said, the same year that he made this. It's kind of interesting that I haven't seen it, but I'm assuming his Dream of the Red Chamber from the same year is quite different from the Mad Monk. But again, attesting to how how kind of skilled and multi-skilled this guy was, right? That he could take on all these quite different projects. Starring Yao Feng, who again I didn't really know, but apparently as well as the two, because he made two, the Mad Monk and the Mad Monk Strikes Again, which we may talk about a little bit, was also the star of the Crazy Bumpkins series, which I've not seen any of, but I'm really hoping we can get our hands on some, because I want to watch some Crazy Bumpkins now that I know there's a whole series.
Is that Shaw?
Yeah, 1974 until I think until about 76. I think he went straight from being a Crazy Bumpkin to being a Mad Monk. So and there's
I want to see. I want to see more Yao Feng doing his Yao Feng slightly jolly, slightly grumpy shtick,
And so his incarnation of Qidong is it's quite interesting because he plays him almost like, well, to put it nicely, he's a bit slow, isn't he? Because he turns up. It's a very episodic film. It's basically a series of kind of sketches that play out. And he always turns up and he's got there's some dispute going on and he's got this look on his face like
totally gormless.
Like trying to grasp even the most
awesome.
basic thing, like, he's not happy with him. Why is that? For fuck's sake. Because he owes him money. He owes him money. Why doesn't he pay him the money? For fuck's sake, he doesn't have the money to pay him. It's actually quite funny. It has to be said.
His performance is excellent, and I'm just now picturing him in a pair of dungarees and like a straw hat in this Bumpkin series.
Right, Cletus, or something.
I think that would be fantastic. But he's just he kind of almost like just stares off into space, slightly cross-eyed at various points. It's almost like even more than holy fool, like holy idiot almost. But then as we discover, he has.
Yeah,
There's more to him than this. Yeah,
there's a slight kind of, before we get into the 3 or 4 kind of main, there's a slight framing device where it clues us in a little bit, isn't there? Where early on he's seen as he might just be a bit of he's walking around basically, and he has this theme song all about, isn't it great, just being a wandering monk, and I don't have to, get involved in, the social more. I'm just enjoying myself, bumbling about and begging for food and stealing things. And he steals some shit, right? And you think, oh yeah. But then spoilers throughout all. It doesn't really matter, I don't in this film. But so he steals some stuff, and then from some merchants or something, right? And they run after him, and then the place where they previously were before they ran after him, there's like a wall behind them that suddenly collapses, and they're like, oh, if we had still been there, we'd have been crushed to death. And they kind of give this monk the benefit. And it's quite cleverly played, because you don't know if that was actually his intention or he just kind of got away with it.
And it does come full circle, because at the very end he robs a bunch of Shaolin monks' robes, really just to get drunk. Like there doesn't seem to be any. It's just to get the money to get, and he's a hard drinking, meat eating Buddhist, which the movie points out. And if you read about him, if you read the Wikipedia entry on Zhigong, apparently he was not a typical Buddhist.
Yeah, but also in that particular scene, in the first scene of the film, then the one thing I noticed was he doesn't actually steal the money.
Yes.
So he leaves the money. He climbs up on this rooftop thing and just leaves the money behind, and then they just take the money back. So, and he's kind of this. It's a weird word to use, and it's not quite the right word, but he's almost like this kind of messianic figure, isn't it? He's breezing into town, solving everyone's problems.
Oh yeah, there's a little hobo element here for sure. He's walking on down that road and sorting out people's problems, and then drifting on to the next.
Until tomorrow, I just keep moving on.
Every step he takes, he makes a new friend. If you think about it.
I quite like the opening.
That show used to make me sad.
It's terribly sad. That it has that same element of like the end of any given episode of The Incredible Hulk, where Bruce Banner's his pants are all ripped off, but he's thumbing a lift. Anyway.
No.
End of The Incredible Hulk. I wasn't feeling sad.
Okay. No. He changes his trousers before he goes hitchhiking.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
He's always got some new denim and flannel.
That's it. Yeah.
But I was gonna say I really like the opening animation, which is weird for a few different reasons. One is it's very Pink Panther-y. And it's also. It throws you a bit, because maybe this speaks to that whole Beijing thing, because it has like cars and ambulances and trucks. It has modern day stuff as he's kind of ambling along. You're like, hey, hang on, isn't this a period set thing? And then it is. So why that is confusing. But anyway, I really liked. I thought it was a great little.
Interesting you should mention that. It would be. I can imagine an alternative world where, for some reason, that Hollywood decided to remake this, and I can kind of see Peter Sellers as
yeah,
I
can see that. Although I have to say, maybe it's physical resemblance, but I don't think it is. I could just envisage Sammo Hung doing.
Oh yeah, like if they were going to do a
thing throughout.
Yeah.
And if this had been made in Japan, I think that Katsu Shintaro would have been a sure bet. There's something about some of the Zatoichi shtick of appearing to be
breezing into town, seeming like a fool, and solving everyone's problems, right?
Yeah.
Except, so the other element we should probably mention is Yao Feng, also, Jigong, Crazy Jigong, when he was at the temple before he fucked off, he did learn magic.
Yes.
So he's also, which is something that slowly creeps in this version. You're not quite sure until a very specific thing happens. So,
Yes.
so the opening, it's probably the most memorable scene. This was the scene in the film, I think, which was, it had me quite absorbed, because on the one hand, I was thinking, fucking hell, this is taking a long time for basically one gag, which I can kind of see coming. Not quite, but I can kind of see where it's going. But because it takes its time, I really got quite drawn into it, in the same way as Yao Feng's doing the whole, you know, annoying the townsfolk by being so fucking dim that they actually explain things to him 100 times. I was also kind of slowly being drawn in by it, you know. So Chan Shen plays like a loan shark, basically, I guess. He's
Hey, Chan Shen.
Chan Shen, Darren's Dracula's lover.
Right.
And who is it? It's Sang Cho Lam, I think, isn't it? Who plays an old man in debt to him, who has a very large goiter. So there we go. We're slowly putting together our running list for our Goiter Film Festival. This can go alongside whatever the fuck that
whichever Pontianak movie had it. Yeah.
There'll be another one. There will be another.
Oh yeah,
guarantee. And triple bill with good. That's enough for us to hire a drive-in for the night and posters saying all goiter all the time.
Clive, I'm disappointed with your limited vision on this.
Oh, okay.
I want the 24-hour goiter festival.
Well, no, Darren, don't get me wrong. If we find enough films to fill 24 hours, we will. But I'm just saying we can drum up some enthusiasm with a
Well, we just need to apply ourselves.
Yeah, who knows? If you type goiter into the Internet Movie Database thing.
Yeah.
But you know,
we may get a few
documentaries,
porn rabbit holes to go down.
Yes.
Oh God.
Plus, you know, I want to be surprised. I want the goiter to creep up on me rather than
right.
Maybe there's a goiter hub.
Yeah.
Online.
There's probably some goiter fetish porn. I don't know if there's such a thing. People rubbing
what is it? Rule
against goiters.
Rule something if you can imagine it, there's pornography about it. So almost certainly.
So if you have any goiter porn, if you know of any goiter porn, please don't send us the links.
No. I want to see one of them.
Yes.
See if I like it.
Yes. You might not want to watch the entire series of MILFs with goiters, but just one entry in the series should be fine. Anyway.
Yes, discerning viewers should let us know what's the primo
the
one.
Best
What's the one that you have to see?
Yeah,
don't miss.
Goiter kake.
Like with one person and then like a whole bunch of men with goiters rubbing on their face at the same time.
Oh, if that doesn't exist in Japan, I'll be surprised.
As Picard would say, make it so. So anyway,
well, we gone way off the rails. Bringing it back to old man with his goiter who has borrowed money he can't pay back.
Yes. And then so there's this whole protracted thing where a Jigong gets involved and somehow kind of makes Chan Shen kind of say something along the lines of, yes, I want, because he's trying to tear this goiter off. I don't quite know why.
Yes, he's grabbing on the goiter to cause him pain, and then the monk says, why are you pulling on that? You're not going to get gold out of that. And then somehow he kind of tricks him into saying that he will take the goiter as payment for the debt.
And then amazingly, he does actually manage to remove the goiter from Sang Cho Lam and
by sawing it off with his the edge of his hand.
It's like that psychic surgery stuff that you've heard about.
Yeah.
And then attaches it to Chan Chen. So obviously it's kind of like a moral, or it's a fable, or But the scene that makes me laugh is quite well played. Is later on, Chan Chen's walking around with this goit off his face, and he bumps into some of his wealthy merchant friends, and they're like, "What's that? Where did you get that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I paid for it." Like, and the look on their faces is, "What? What have you done now?" I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah. The Emperor's New Goiter. Yeah,
right. Yes. So, and that's the template basically. Is there's a whole series of it's kind of the same thing plays out again and again, and it's always people in positions of power. It's always kind of corrupt. So later on, for example, there's I suppose the other notable one is there's and this is tied up. There's another story about this pavilion that's going to be torn down, and he kind of that feeds into another story. So he's all about tricking people into a position. He's like a pool hustler or something, like where they think this guy, obviously I'm going to win the bet, and then he gets what he wants. He does this because it seems like he'll never be able to pull off, because they don't know that he has these supernatural powers, right? So the other main one, I suppose, is there's this kind of spoilt young aristocrat. I think he's a prince or anything, but he has his designs on. There's a couple, and he has his designs on her, Xu Yam Yam, I believe.
Yeah, he's just a shopkeeper and the shopkeeper's wife, so they're obviously of a lower class.
Yes, but he wants this girl for himself, and so
it's funny. I will say that part, like it does. It's one of those tonal shifts that movies not made in the West do. That always interests me. Right, a lot of this movie is very like, right, like kind of like
that's
very,
exactly it.
Distilled. But suddenly that scene where they're like horse whipping the husband so that he can rape the wife, and then does attempt to rape the wife, is like holy shit, this movie just shifted gears, and savagely.
He's not even whipped on the back. He's got these welts down his face and everything. It's like there's a reasonable amount of brutality in there, isn't there?
It's a proper like Lucio Fulci, massacre time, or
Don't torture a duckling you're thinking of.
Or that, well, there's two. This Massacre Time is the
that's right. There's
Franco Nero getting horse. Fulci came back to the whole being horsewhipped savagely for 7 minutes more than once. But yeah, Don't Torture a Duckling has that one's grim.
Well, it's a chain whipping as well, isn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yes. So it's funny that scene is just jumped out at me when I was watching. I made a note like, we're in a wholly different territory. Things got very rapey and very, very ugly all of a sudden.
So basically, the way he kind of negotiates this one is he makes sure. So he puts some kind of spell on the young aristocrat rapey man character, and his head starts inflating, right?
First he goes, and it goes on and on, but there's a whole like, I'm feeling cold,
on
and then I'm too hot. That goes on for like what feels like 25
reading that
minutes.
Story that is directly taken. That is one of the original stories. The whole cold, and his head's just started inflating. I haven't started getting into that part. But he turns into like Frank Sidebottom.
Yes, that was exactly my takeaway. Although it's weirdly effective. That's like that cheesy special effect, because they shoot it at the right angles, and it's actually kind of disconcerting and upsetting. I was like, ugh.
Well, the thing is, he's the other thing about the Jigong character as well is he doesn't just do this playing the fool thing, and he's secret. I mean, when he's in the middle of it, he does take a perverse glee in really torturing these characters. He pretends that he needs this bit of medicine that he's lost, right? And he gets like everyone in this, all the courtiers and stuff, they have to get on their hands and knees and sniff around the grounds, and he
For the
sends them off
fragrant
specifically
tiny
to the
pill.
latrine, right? He sends them off. Yeah,
to deeply huff the turds.
Yeah.
And they all come back like gagging.
It just always goes that little bit further than you might expect it to. Very entertaining. And then to your point as well about the tonal shift, it does have, they do have this stark moral message. So this episode kind of eventually, sorts itself out, but he does warn, like, now, don't be lecherous anymore, because I've cured you, but who knows, and then immediately he starts leching to the point where his head expands and his house blows up.
It's not even a house though. It's like a palace complex. It's like a fucking And you get the couple just kind of turn around and go, huh. But that's like, presumably he's taken all the courtiers with him, all the servants, all the kitchen staff. That's like the whole palace has just gone up.
But that's funny. That's the second time in the movie that actually happens, where a wicked character, an evil character, is given a threat. Like because the goiter as well will get smaller if he does good deeds and bigger if he does bad deeds, and then he immediately goes off and is an asshole again, and it expands considerably, right? And you're like, oh yeah, he's not learned the lesson.
It's basically the same gag again.
Yeah,
but
so and the middle gag's the same as well, though. The middle story is the same as well. Go on.
No, I was just saying we'll get to the sequel in a bit, because the sequel's a little bit different. But this first one, like you said, it's the same gag again and again and again. But like I said, because it kind of takes itself weirdly, they could have been really slapdash with it, but because they actually take their time and they tell the story, and because of Yao Feng's performance, I think, and everything about it, I quite blindsided. I really rather enjoyed the Mad Monk. I thought it was actually very entertaining. I don't know how you both felt about it, but I really liked the Mad Monk.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I must admit, I haven't seen the sequel. If that's what you were talking about, I was actually talking about the middle
story, which is also quite good too.
Yeah. So with the one with the evil monk, and the exploding cherry.
Yes.
Complete with powder, black powder on the face.
Yes.
The hair all spiked up.
He turns it into a pearl, doesn't he? And then Well, at first I thought, fuck, has he killed him? But then you see him staggering out, and I thought, oh, that's all right. But then at the end, he obviously has murdered at least a dozen people, right?
It's like he's this jolly jolly expression of righteous vengeance, isn't he?
Yes.
He's like fucking jolly nemesis.
Yeah, it's like Fatty Arbuckle as serial killer or something.
I quite like that.
He did kill that one girl, Fatty Arbuckle.
That's
true.
True.
Yes.
But I was going to say, like that's a great one too, because that's one of the perfect ones where he shows up completely just obtuse and oblivious and annoying to all. And there's a lot of stuff of the other townspeople being like, "You stink, buddy. Like you smell. Could you please stand further away from me?"
He's fucking smashed half the time as well.
Yes. He's got that wine bottle he's always guzzling out of. But yeah, he
that's
finds
a big thing in the stories is whenever he has a chance. Because I was wondering how much of the Ji-Gong character informs the Drunken Master Sam the Seed character.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. Right at the start,
isn't there?
Yeah, you get this because Sam Seed does exactly the same thing, doesn't he? He just kind of blunders around town, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then, gives people their comeuppance in a sly way, in a surreptitious way. Because he's underestimated,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's as if, if Rab C. Nesbitt actually ended up doing good, in some way. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see the deeply Scottish version of Mad Monk.
Oh yeah.
See it, and then everyone just writes him off, and then he actually cures injustice and then makes people explode if they.
But yeah, that
Scottish film industry, get on it. We want
Nicola Sturgeon, come on.
We want a Glaswegian Mad Monk.
So yeah, that whole middle section is great. The whole part where they basically like go into the restaurant in order to like cage a free meal out of the place and just order a ridiculous. I mean, again, I think it's that thing where like when you can run a gag into the ground, but then you can keep going past that point of like and it comes around to being funny again.
That's what I mean. That's really difficult to do, and it does it 3 or 4 times. That's the thing. Like I said at the beginning, I thought, oh no, I'm not going to get on with this film because I'm 3 paces ahead of it. But then it kind of wrong foots you, and it does a tortoise and the hare kind of thing, and, and suddenly I'm sucked into. I'm in that his gormless has infected me. Right? It's a bit. Another analogy I remember years ago, back when they were still new, Channel 4 ran an entire night of Beavis and Butthead episodes back to back.
Oh yeah.
And I watched it, and I had this really weird hypnotic effect where at first you were just enjoying it as this is funny Beavis, and then about 3 or 4 episodes in, you like, and then you became Beavis and Butthead, and you were like watching it like it was the strangest thing. Like you said, it's gone from being funny to not funny, and then being funnier than ever again. It's quite the you need a certain amount of, and obviously by 1977, Li Han-Hsiang's been around the block a few times. You need a certain amount of confidence to do that, and because it could turn out, it could go very, very badly if you don't get the pacing right.
But also I think the other kind of motivation, the other thing that keeps me interested when I'm watching this is, almost instantly, that the monk's up to something, and he's gonna triumph, and he's gonna get one over on the on the con man. He's gonna con the con man, but you kind of don't know how. You kind of don't know what his strategy is, and that's a nice little way to pique your interest and keep your interest. So even though the gag runs long,
you don't know exactly.
You don't quite know how he's going to have the other person over.
You don't quite know how Columbo's going to get
exactly. And another thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My wife loves your books. So we should mention. So we all seem to have enjoyed the Mad Monk much more than we expected. Yeah. So there's a sequel, The Mad Monk Strikes Again. Did either of you get a chance to see it?
So I grabbed it, but I haven't had a chance. But it was made like the very next year, right?
Yeah.
With the same star, but not the same director.
No, it was Wong Fung who did it. Yeah, and it's a very different beast. I saw it. There's a version on YouTube which is dubbed into Thai. But the one notable thing about the second one is a lot more varied in a way. Like there's a lot more stories for a start. So they try and do more types of things rather than just bits of people's bodies expanding. And the Jigong character's a bit more. He's less benevolent. He's a bit more of a pest in that one. Plus, he has a rival in the form of this like fox spirit guy, and they have like magic dual things. But it's lacking. It's funny. You're in a slightly upside down world where you are referring to the Mad Monk as the kind of the Class C one, because it is kind of not quite right. But the sequel seems a lot more slapdash. But you will enjoy it, I think, to a certain extent, because number one, it's got shitloads of gratuitous nudity in, which is mosaiced in the Thai version, oddly enough, or at least for YouTube. But you can see it, and Darren, there's a talking reanimated skeleton.
Oh, now we're talking.
Okay.
Well, to be honest, you have mere tits, but
And I have a copy that
and skeletons.
I have a copy that should be on digitally fogged as well, because
banned, man. Yeah.
So I will.
Yeah,
throw that in the Google Drive for you guys.
But going back to the original, and you sort of questioned but didn't question, almost questioned that, you know, the Mad Monk, the original, is the classy one. Well, I think it is classy. In fact, I wrote, you know, I wrote that down in my notes.
Oh, there we go.
Gentle, classy fun is what how I actually termed that. And it is. It's kind of, it's like a good version of Last of the Summer Wine. You know, it's kind of because it's
see that one coming.
No,
but it's kind of quaint. You know, it's kind of innocent. It has this innocence about it. It has this quaintness about it. It kind of, although, you know, like we spoke about, he's killing people right, left, and centre. He's doing it with the best of intentions, and it still manages to me to come off as kind of almost twee, quaint, cozy.
I mean, who knows how many people, compo and core, the collateral damage they wiped out, heading down a hill in a wheelbarrow.
Well, I think it's like an inverse Who Could Kill a Child or Children of the Corn. I think.
Right. Darren's not allowed to make any more analogies, so he's been
the whole show just collapse on itself.
Unbanned.
Unbanned. You carry on doing that, we're going to stick a goiter on you.
There's one little scene that just, and I realized later on, I think I misunderstood what was happening, because later on he does seem to have these tiny fragrant pills, but I thought he just picked a piece of lint off of his shirt and fed it to that guy who drowned, and I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, but he's got these pills like sewn into his clothes,
yeah. So it looked initially like he just pulled a little bit of fluff and fed it to that guy, but anyway,
so as we said earlier, when we were talking Enchanting Shadow, we will be picking up the slack on our Not in ShawScope, and we'll be doing Chinese Ghost Story. And in relation to the Mad Monk, we will be doing Stephen Chow's 1993 Mad Monk. So that'll be our next Not in double bill. Closing statements. No more analogies, loud, Darren. But other than that, anything else either of you want to say?
It's like a balloon, but square.
Right.
Oh, okay. This is your goiter, I assume. But yeah,
balls.
No. Right. No, both movies this time out were very easy to watch. They're lots of fun.
So you have been watching Clive Davis,
Darren Jones,
and Nick Sheehan
in Last of the Summer Goiters. Come on, everyone.
Quick thinking. I don't know the fucking theme tune.
Me neither.
Obviously, neither do I.